Hello and greetings once again from the vicarage. I hope that you're all keeping well. Today, in many respects, it's a day for celebration. It's our first Sunday back in church after missing 19 Sundays. I know that for many of you, you're still not able to attend because of the limited numbers of people that we can safely fit into our church. And for others, it's still a little bit early for you to be going out into confined spaces with a large amount of people. But over the next month or so, I'm sure that I'll be able to see you all back in church, if only for limited services. Each week, when I write this message, I try and keep you up to date with the latest guidance from the National Church, which follows on from the advice from the government. I almost dread looking at the website because of the many restrictions or things that are being imposed on us. But I have to remind myself that it's all about keeping us safe. Having said that, this week it's all about face coverings. Where it was previously stated that it was strongly advised to wear a face covering in church, it has now become law as from the 8th of August that everyone, with the exception of the clergy leading the service, has to wear a face covering in church. The only other exception is for a bride and groom at their wedding service. I'm pleased to report that after much waiting and many discussions, we still have 3 couples who are getting married at St Mary's over the next couple of months, and their banns are being read in church for the first time today. Today is the 9th Sunday after Trinity, and our first reading comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verses 1 to 4 and 12 to 28. It's a familiar story of Joseph, who was one of Jacob's 12 sons, and from what we read, his most favourite of sons. He made this obvious to his other sons when he gave Joseph a beautiful robe as a special gift. Now, robes in those days were not only to keep you warm, but they were used for carrying your belongings, wrapping up babies in, sitting on, and even as a security for a loan. They varied in different style and quality and length, depending on who you were. And Joseph probably had a very fine quality, long-sleeved and ankle length, the kind more associated with royalty. I guess many of you have watched the film or seen the play of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I remember seeing this for the first time in the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry many years ago. The passage with the account of how the brothers get their own back on Joseph and think they have finally seen the last of their annoying brother is our first part of our reading. And we'll follow the story in later weeks and see the changes in the different characters. Also being reminded how God watches over us and has a plan for each of us. It's an amazing story where far too much happens to be considered as coincidences. Moving on to our Gospel reading, it continues where we left off last week. It's from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Jesus walks on the water. Last week I had a holiday in Wales. It's a lovely spot where we go. We're both near to the mountains and the sea, two of mine and Sam's favourite things. Ruby, our dog, she loves water, and whenever we're in Wales and we put her lead on, she knows that she's going somewhere where she'll be able to swim. It's the only time that she pulls on the lead. Normally she's very placid and laid back, but when there's a chance of water, things are very different. Having learnt from a young age that if you run straight into the sea, there's a chance you'll end up getting flipped over by the wave, she's a little bit more cautious now. As wonderful as the sea is, you need to take care. What sometimes looks like a gentle lapping of the waves can often take you off your feet and rather surprise you by getting wet at the very best. In our reading, the disciples were caught out, despite most of them being used to the sea. I have witnessed firsthand how the Sea of Galilee can be so calm and still 1 minute, and then in the space of a very short time become quite rough and with noticeable waves. This is mainly due to the effects of the wind blowing down the valley from the north onto the sea. And I think this is what must have happened to the disciples. And I can only imagine how frightening it must have been for them, especially as it was night time. In the Old Testament, there is a long tradition of associating the sea with evil powers. According to an ancient creation myth, when God made the world and separated the dry land, he had to combat monstrous forces of chaos that lived in the waters of the sea. And this battle is recorded in many verses from the Psalms and also the prophets. The writers of both often remind God of what he has done and ask that he also use his same powers now. At this present time, we might too think about asking God and wondering why God doesn't use his powers and might bring us out of this dreadful pandemic, or maybe even thinking, has he forgotten us? But as we learn from this story, we are not forgotten. The Lord watches over us, unseen, as Jesus did from the banks of the sea, and that he, the master of winds and waves, will surely come to our salvation, even if it is in the fourth watch of the night. However aware you are of the sea, this image of the storm has lost none of its power over the years and has strengthened many Christians over the time. Perhaps not in the sense of physical storms, being calmed or even walking on water, but certainly in the sense that Christ's words still have the extraordinary power to bring a calm, a great calm, particularly in times of need or desperation. When we have faith, however small or faltering, that he is who he is, it is he who says, "Peace, be still, do not be afraid." Amen.